Assalamualaikum and a very good day to our respected lecturer. Today, our group will be presenting on NEO-REALISM, an international relations theory that explains how the lawless structure of the global system shapes state behavior. Before we begin, let me introduce the team. Our group consists of Muhammad Alif bin Abdul Kadir, Hana Shafika binti Ayub, Nurul Nabila binti Abdul Halim, Nurul Nadia binti Hizari Effendi, and lastly, Nurul Shazwani binti Cik Muhammad Ahir. Now, let's proceed with the first part of our presentation. Before we begin, let me introduce the team. Our group consists of Muhammad Alif bin Abdul Kadir, Hana Shafika binti Ayub, Nurul Nabila binti Abdul Halim, Nurul Nadia binti Hizari Effendi, and lastly, Nurul Shazwani binti Cik Muhammad Ahir. Now, let's proceed with the first part of our presentation.
Every single day, we wake up to the news of global friction, trade wars between superpowers, military standoff in distant waters, and alliances shifting overnight. To the untrained eye, global politics looks like pure chaos, but to political scientists, there is a hidden engine driving these events. For generations, traditional scholars link global conflict directly to flawed human nature, individual greed, and the dangerous egos of power-hungry leaders, a framework known as classical realism. But today, we explore a theory that completely updates this view, a theory that looks past individual human flaws and points its finger at a much larger, invisible force, the rigid structure of the international system itself. Our objective is to explain how neorealism dictates state behavior, shapes intense global competition, and defines modern conflict patterns. Today, we will guide you through its historical origins, defines its core pillars, break down its main arguments, evaluate its modern impacts, and analyze critical real-world examples. The intellectual architect behind neorealism is none other than the legendary political scientist, Chemist Watts. His seminal work, Theory of International Politics, published in 1979, completely revolutionized the study of international relations and remains the ultimate foundation for structural thought. To understand why Watts wrote this, we return to the late 1970s. Classical realism could not explain why states completely different niggas and systems, democratic or authoritarian, still act in almost exactly the same way when power and survival were at stake. What saw the gap? He argued boldly. It is not human nature, not culture, not ideology that drives state action. It is the systematic constraint of the international environment. States are forced to act defensively or offensively simply because of where they stand within the global balance of power. Today, this framework is carried forward, most famously by John Schmidt, the father of offensive neorealism, and Stephen Walls, known for his balance of trade theory.
By formal definition, neorealism frequently referred to as structuralism, which is an international relation framework that explains state behavior, global cooperation, and systematic conflict primarily through the lens of the international system structure. It intentionally disregards the internal characteristic of the state. It does not matter if a state is a democracy, a communist regime, or a monarchy, which the structure forces them all to play by the same brutal rules. This brings us to the core distinction between the old and the new realism. Classic realism looks like inside the state and inside human psychology, claiming that war happened simply because people and political leaders are naturally power hungry. Neorealism hits back with a much colder structured truth. where war happened, not because the leader want to fight, but the global system has no central authority or global government to guarantee their safety. In short, conflict is a tragic, inevitable design flaw to our world. Is international anarchy. This does not mean complete chaos on the street where there is defined a system where there is no supreme global government above the state to enforce law, the mischievous, or protect a nation when they are attacked. Anarchy is defining unchangeable features of the international system. Second is survival. Because there is no government to protect them, survival becomes the ultimate non-negotiable and absolute priority for every state. Before a nation can think about human rights, climate change, or cultural exchange, it must first guarantee its own existence. The concept is the self-help principle. In an anarchic world, a will cannot dial my mind for international rescue. There is no permanent global peace. Therefore, a state can only rely on their own military capability, economic strength to rescue the survivor. Trusting a nation with greatly is a fatal mistake. Fourth concept is power distribution. This concept looks at how material capability is arranged. The system stability change completely depending on whether the world is bipolar, which is the dominated by polar, or bipolar, balance between two polar, or multipolar, where multiple polar compete for the fifth concept is relative gain in global cooperation. State democracy will this deal make us both richer? Instead, a new release asks, who is gaining more from this deal, me or my rival? State prioritize relative gains because if a rival gain more wealth or technology, they can easily transform that gain into military power to threaten you back later. And the final concept is the balancing versus bandwagoning. When facing a massive rising superpower, smaller states face a strategic dilemma. They can choose balancing where they build up their own military and form coalition to counter and check the stronger power, or they can choose bandwagoning where they submissively align themselves with a dominant threat, hoping to stay on its side. These six concepts form an unbreakable DNA of structuralism.
In neorealism, the international stage is a lawless world. There is no global government, no world police, just anarchy. Because of this permanent fear, even peaceful nations are forced to build up their military power, not because they want war, but because they desperately need to survive. This dark reality splits the theory into two rival schools of thought. History shows us that world peace is determined by the layout of power. A bipolar world, like the Cold War, where two big powers, the US and the Soviet Union, balance each other out, is surprisingly stable. But a multipolar world with too many nations fighting for dominance is a ticking time bomb. To conclude, neorealism leaves us with three harsh truths. First, states are the only actors that matter. Organizations like the UN are just tools for the powerful. Second, survival always comes before morality. And finally, conflict is not a mistake or a misunderstanding. It is a natural risk built directly into the fabric of our world.
The historical impact of neorealism on international relations is not just monumental, but it's practical. Why? Because it strips away the idealism. It remains our primary lens to make sense of intense arms races, rapid alliance shift, and great power competition. When we look at the strategic behavior of modern superpowers like the US, China, or Russia, let's be real. They are not acting on moral ideals or international goodwill, but they are reacting to system constraints, behaving exactly as canon works predicted. Ultimately, this structural logic leaves us with three core unforgettable lessons. First, concepts like international trust, peace treaties, international law, they cannot guarantee a nation's long-term security. At the end of the day, a treaty is just a piece of paper if a superpower decides it no longer serves them. Second, any shift in the global power layout, take the rise of China or the defiance of Russia, and this will almost automatically trigger structural tension, systemic anxiety, and a high risk of flashpoints. And third, while cooperation is possible, it is fundamentally limited, fragile, and temporary. Why? Because when a crisis hits, state survival comes first, and partners become secondary.
Let us break down the comparative matrix. When we evaluate the root cause of a conflict, classical realism based in internal human nature and idiot greed, while neorealism shifts the blame entirely outwards to international anarchy and the system structure. In terms of main focus, classical realism analyzes individual political leaders and a specific national traits, whereas neo-realism ignores this detail to focus strictly on a global power distributions. Looking at the foundational thinker, the old school answer to Hans Morgenthau, while the structural school was built by Knit was consequently the core goals of state change fundamentally. Classical realism argues that states are designed to constantly maximize their raw power. Neo-realism argues that states are rational actors designed to maximize their security and guarantee survival. Like any theoretical framework, structural realism has its distinct strengths and limitations. Its ultimate advantage lies in this elegant, highly reliable structure and a strong empirical evidence which flawlessly explains historical great power rivalries, arms races, and systemic wars. However, its prominent weakness is that it acts as oversimplifications. By focusing exclusively on states, it completely ignores highly influential non-state actors like the United Nations, multinational corporations, or transnational NGOs, and it heavily downplays the real power of international cooperations, human culture, and global ideologies. In a conclusion, neorealism fundamentally forces us to look away from who global leaders are and focus entirely on the brutal system in which they are forced to operate. While it may not explain every soft diplomatic nonsense, it remains an absolutely essential, indispensable tool for decoding raw, hard geopolitics flashpoints like the Spratly Islands dispute today. Ultimately, Kenneth Walls leave us with a profound chilling reminder. Security competitions, militarizations, and the threats of war are not just products of bad leaders or evil states. They are structurally built into the very way our international world is organized.